Hey, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Pigeons, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through every single book that I've read so far this year. I know there's only a month left to the year, but I thought this might be a fun video to do. I recently very heavily got back into reading. I've always been a really big reader, but as a teenager during high school, I kind of stopped reading as much as I did when I was in elementary school and a kid. So I would only read maybe 1 or 2 books a year in high school, perhaps a few more, but I didn't read all that much. But a couple of years ago, I got back into reading more heavily. And last year I read, I think, 15 books. And then this year so far I've read 19. When everything happened, when my life turned upside down this year in April, I stopped reading. I didn't have time. Everything was too stressful. But then in August, I picked back up some books, and I've read 18 books in the past couple of months since the middle of August, since my birthday. So I've just really rediscovered my love of reading, and there are a lot of books on my shelf that I have not yet gotten to. But there are also a lot of books that a lot of my friends read when we were young, that I never read. So I decided that I wanted to pick up some of those books. So definitely a lot of YA books in my stack this year. But yeah, nothing super new. There's a couple newer books that I've read, but yeah, I'm just kind of playing catch up with my bookshelf and all of the books that I've collected over the years. I think I've got 500 books or something like that. So yeah, this is definitely my favorite thing ever. Anyways, though, so I'll go through each book. And I've got my laptop up right here, so I will tell you what I rated it on Goodreads. So these are going to be in no particular order, except for this one. This was the first book that I started off reading this year. It was recommended to me by one of my best friends. This is The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. This book is a memoir of the author's very unconventional childhood. It's very emotional. It's quite heartbreaking, and a good read. On Goodreads, I rated this book 4 stars. It wasn't quite a 5-star read for me, just in my own personal opinion. Reading is super subjective. I know that the friend who recommended this one to me would probably rate this one 5 stars. It's one of her favorite books. But as much as I enjoy learning about other people's lives, I personally tend to prefer more of a magical element to what I read. I love magical realism, and I love fantasy. Yeah, I just love escaping into other worlds when I read. But this was definitely a fascinating look into the author's life, and just a sad account of what the author went through, how she was parentified at a young age, how she was kind of just left to her own devices to grow up. So I'll read you the back. It says, "The Glass Castle is a remarkable memoir of resilience and redemption, and a revelatory look into a family at once deeply dysfunctional and uniquely vibrant. When sober, Jeanette's brilliant and charismatic father captured his children's imagination, teaching them physics, geology, and how to embrace life fearlessly. But when he drank, he was dishonest and destructive. Her mother was a free spirit who abhorred the idea of domesticity and didn't want the responsibility of raising a family. The Wall's children learned to take care of themselves. They fed, clothed, and protected one another, and eventually found their way to New York. Their parents followed them, choosing to be homeless even as their children prospered. The Glass Castle is truly astonishing, a memoir permeated by the intense love of a peculiar but loyal family." Very fascinating read. I would recommend it. Next, we have I think this is middle grade. This is definitely meant for not even young adults. I read this first when I was in elementary school, and I remember it made a lasting impression on me because the concept was so unique. This is Break by Hannah Moskowitz, and the very cool thing about this author is that she wrote this book when I believe she was 16. Yes, about the author. If all goes well, Hannah Moskowitz will be out of high school by the time you read this. She can't cook, likes to play dress up, and has never broken a bone. Break is her first novel. I think that is incredibly endearing, and it makes this book very impressive to me. I rated this one 3 stars on Goodreads. Yeah, so it's a story about a young boy who is on a mission to break every single bone in his body because he heard that broken bones grow back stronger. And his brother suffers with a debilitating allergies rather. He's allergic to a lot of things, and Jonah feels that it's his responsibility to care for his brother, and it dives deep into mental illness, self-harm, and the effect that mental health and also illness, other sort of illnesses can have on a family. The back says, "The first feeling is exhilaration. The second feeling is pain. The feeling that never comes is regret. Jonah is on a mission to break every bone in his body. Everyone knows that broken bones grow back stronger than they were before. Jonah wants to be stronger, needs to be stronger, because everything around him is falling apart. Breaking and then healing is the only way he can cope with the stresses of home, girls, and the world on his shoulders. When Jonah's self-destructive spiral accelerates and he hits rock bottom, will he find true strength or surrender to his breaking point?" And yeah, the fact that such a young person, a high school student, can write something like this and incorporate all these really tough subjects so well is so impressive. So yeah, I enjoyed this read. Break by Hannah Moskowitz. Like I said, I read it when I was young, but I wanted to read it again. So I found a copy online and ordered it so that I could experience this very unique, interesting novel again. Nothing life-changing, but yeah, it's just all the more impressive to me because the author is just so young when she wrote it. Next, I've got this book. This is called The Butterbox Babies, Baby Sales, Baby Deaths, The Scandalous Story of the Ideal Maternity Home. This book is very deeply disturbing. This was one of the more recent books that I read. I rated this book 3 stars on Goodreads. On Storygraph, the ratings are a little bit more accurate because you can rate in quarter increments, so you can do 3.25, 3.5. So I do have Storygraph also, but I just really like Goodreads. I always have used it to track my reading. But anyways, Butterbox Babies. This is a Canadian true crime novel about the ideal maternity home, which was located in Nova Scotia in the early 1900s. It was marketed as a asylum for unwed women who became pregnant. Their parents would send them away, but the owners were truly disturbed people. It turned into just greed, and yeah, it's the story of how it turned into what it turned into. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to ruin the story, but if you don't intend on reading this book, it's not a well-known crime, especially like in Canada. I'd never heard of it before. Canada is where I'm from. Read about this. Or watch YouTube videos on this. It's so disturbing. I'll read you the back here though. Stories about the ideal maternity home in East Chester, Nova Scotia have been the subject of public trials and private whisperings for half a century. Now, after 3 years of research and scores of interviews from coast to coast, author Betty Cahill reveals the truth about the home, its owners, the babies who were born there, and those who died there. It is a truth that will horrify and enrage, for in these pages, Cahill charges that the children of unwed mothers born in the ideal maternity home were offered for adoption in a manner that amounted to little more than baby farming for profit. We also learned that most of the natural parents had no knowledge of these practices. The babies placed in new homes were the lucky ones. Was the high infant mortality rate at the home coincidence, neglect, accident, or economics? Butterbox Babies is a story of greed, hypocrisy, and justice. It is also the moving story of children who survived the ideal maternity home and their search for a past. Betty Cahill traces their lives today as their search leads them from disappointment to rejection, and in some cases, the joy of reunion with the parents they never knew. There's a chapter at the end with true accounts of some of these sold children reuniting with parents, and a lot of the time they were told, the mothers were told that their children had died, but they didn't. They didn't. Okay. So that was Butterbox Babies. Deeply, deeply disturbing. Next, I read this one in one sitting on my birthday. This is The Kiss Quotient. The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. This was fun. This was definitely a good, light beach read. I read it on the beach on my birthday. I rated this one 3 stars as well. A lot of people really, really love this book, but I found that the male character was just very almost like the author was trying too hard to make him perfect. Like, okay, let me tell you what this one was about. This is Stella. She is wow, what is she? Like, she works in economics. She's very intelligent. She has autism, and she is interested in starting to date, but she doesn't know how. She's lacking in social skills, and she doesn't know anything about intimate relationship situations. I don't want to get demonetized. So she hires Michael. She hires Michael, who is a male escort, to teach her the ways of the world. And what follows is a cute, endearing, sometimes steamy story about the journey that these two go on together. But yeah, I did quite enjoy this book, but I found that it was very obviously written with the intention of making the female reader kind of like swoon over Michael. He takes great care of his family, loves his sisters and his mother. He is an amazing cook. He does martial arts. He's a very masculine fighter, and but he can do the splits, and he also works as a seamstress, and he designs like perfect dresses for Stella. And it just, I don't know, there's just so many like things that are like the author is going for, like hot masculine man, but like he's sweet at heart, he's a softie, and it's just kind of like, it makes me roll my eyes because it's like obvious what she's trying to do. But I mean, you love him anyway. But anyway, that's The Kiss Quotient. It was a fun read, definitely a light read, nothing life-changing, sorry. Probably wouldn't read it again, but there are 2 more books to the series that I do have, and I will be reading those for sure. Yeah. Okay, so next. Next, I have none other than Twilight. Oh boy. The famous Twilight. I read the entire Twilight series back to back in September because although I loved the movie and read a little bit of the book when I was in elementary school, I never actually read the entire thing or read any of the rest of the series. And I knew that this was somewhere that I had to start with my bookshelf in my game of catch-up. And surprisingly, I really enjoyed reading the Twilight series, some books more than others. But I loved it. The writing is not good. If you're looking for something literary, this ain't it. But it's kind of like, it's like a guilty pleasure book, It's like the McDonald's of literature, where it's like, it's so bad. It's not good for you. It has no nutritional value. But it's addictive, and it's just a really fun story, and I'm not gonna lie, I actually really liked it. I rated Twilight 4 stars. simply based. I rate books simply based on my enjoyment of them. Yeah, definitely didn't rate it 4 stars for the writing quality, but I did rate it 4 stars because I ate this up and I loved every minute of it. So that was the first book of the Twilight series that I read. And then, what's next? New Moon. Next I read book 2 of the Twilight series, New Moon. And this one was okay. Yeah. This one is very centered around like kind of the werewolf plot line. Not many like vampire things are in here. Yeah, I don't know. New Moon was probably my least favorite book in the series. It was okay, but it felt really, really long. Like, it felt like a drag, you know? I just wanted to kind of get back to the main story of Twilight instead of all the backstory of like the treaties and the history of the vampires and the werewolves and all that. It was okay. This one was okay. Gave it 3 stars on Goodreads, but I think I rated it like 2.75 on Storygraph. After that, I read Eclipse. Eclipse is the 3rd book to the Twilight series. This one was pretty good. I mean, it was okay. Again, this is probably like, yeah, I don't know. This one was okay. Again, it wasn't my favorite book in the series, but I did enjoy it more than New Moon. Eclipse was alright, yeah. Still very heavy on like the going back and forth between the werewolves and the vampires. And not gonna lie, I'm definitely Team Edward. Not so much Team Jacob. I found that Jacob just kind of annoyed me sometimes and seemed like he crossed some boundaries with Bella that I didn't really like. Not that Edward didn't, but like Bella loved Edward and Bella made it clear that she wasn't interested in Jacob, but he still pushed, and I don't like that. Anyways, though, the last in the book in the Twilight series is Breaking Dawn. These are huge books, by the way. They're all they're all over 600 pages to like 900, I think. Was this one 900 pages? Oh no, this one's 800 almost. Okay, anyways, though, yeah, Breaking Dawn. I really liked Breaking Dawn. Oh, and I rated Eclipse 3 stars. I really enjoyed Breaking Dawn. This was my favorite book out of the Twilight series. It was just very action-packed, and yeah, a lot of things happen that you wait for the entire series to happen in this book, and I really enjoyed Breaking Dawn. So, I don't know if I'll ever read these again. Honestly, I spent September like just Twilight nonstop, just, you know, to catch up, and by the end of reading those, I was like, I just want to get this over with. Like, I was done with Twilight. But I did enjoy them nonetheless, and because I am a sucker for punishment, I decided to order this book. This is Midnight Sun, another massive book. Yeah, this is 750 pages, just over. This is the first Twilight book retold from Edward's perspective. Oh my goodness. This book was released 13 years after Twilight was released. I did not like this at all. This was painful to get through. There were so many chapters, like car chase scenes and running through the forest, like for pages and pages and pages. This was just like mind-numbing, and maybe it was because I was so like Twilighted out by the time I finished the series that this was just like too much Twilight for me. But I would not read this again. I would not recommend going right into this after reading the entire Twilight series. Maybe give yourself a bit of time to like de-Twilight. But yeah, Midnight Sun from Edward's perspective, it was the exact same story. Some of it was sweet because like you kind of got to look at his true feelings and stuff, but there was just so many unnecessary chapters and scenes in here that just dragged on and on and on. So that was Midnight Sun. I rated that, I think, like 2.5 stars. Yeah, okay. Next, I rated it 3 stars on Goodreads, though I always round up on Goodreads. Next, I've got Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. This and the Kiss Quotient and another one, I believe. These are popular on TikTok, online right now, or at least they were recently. Before the Coffee Gets Cold is about a cafe that, well, here, I'll read you the synopsis on Goodreads here because I take the dust covers off my books. I don't like hardcover books very much because the dust covers just annoy me. So I take them all off and just store them in a box here. It says, if you could go back, who would you want to meet? In a small back alley of Tokyo, there's a cafe that has been serving carefully brewed coffee for more than 100 years. Local legend says that this shop offers something else besides coffee, the chance to travel back in time. Over the course of one summer, 4 customers visit the cafe in hopes of making that journey. But time travel isn't so simple, and there are rules that must be followed. Most important, the trip can last only as long as it takes for the coffee to get cold. Heartwarming, wistful, mysterious, and delightfully quirky, Toshikazu Kawaguchi's internationally best-selling novel explores the age-old question, what would you change if you could travel back in time? I liked this book. It's essentially 4 short stories that kind of intertwine. The third story about sisters made me cry like all night after I finished reading that one, but despite that, I found that the writing was okay. It almost read more like a script or like a play script or something. It wasn't necessarily like a captivating story. The language didn't like captivate me. It was okay. There was a lot of, and I think that this might just be like a lost in translation kind of thing, but the way that the characters communicated seemed like it's not what would happen in real life, you know? It seemed like it was written for stage, which I found kind of took me out of the story a little bit. I think that the concept is super cool, but the execution of this one was a little bit dry, and I did find it a little bit boring at times. I think I rated that one 3.5 stars for Before the Coffee Gets Cold. Again, I know that that's one that a ton of people adore. It was okay for me. I probably wouldn't read it again. I'm also very picky with my ratings. Like most of the books that I read this year, I rated between 3 and 4 stars. I only have 2 5-star reads this year. Yeah. Okay, next I read The Guest List by Lucy Foley. This was really fun. This is a murder mystery. It was recommended from Reese's book club, Reese Witherspoon's book club, and I've heard of this online on TikTok too. I've seen this on there. I half read, half listened to the audiobook of this one. I really liked the audiobook. I found it for free on YouTube. But yeah, the back of this says, an exclusive wedding on a remote Irish island. The bride, the +1, the best man, the wedding planner, the bridesmaid, all have a secret, all have a motive, but only one is a murderer. So yeah, it's a murder mystery. I found that it was longer than it had to be. The twists at the end that are revealed are, I didn't see some of them coming. Definitely takes you by surprise. But it was, even though it's a fairly short book, I think it's only 200 and something pages, maybe just over 3. Okay, yeah, it's just over 300 pages. It felt like it was too long for what the story was. It could have been cut down. I rated that one 4 stars on Goodreads, though that one's very fun, and it was really cool to read it around the Halloween time because it has that like eerie, creepy vibe to it. I have Wild by Cheryl Strayed. This is another true story. It's a memoir of a woman who hiked a portion of the Pacific Crest Trail in the west of America. I'm super interested in hiking long distance trails. I love reading stories and watching videos about the Pacific Crest Trail. A really good channel to watch is Homemade Wanderlust. If you're interested in something like that, the creator of that channel has some full-length films that she created walking all 3 of the Triple Crown trails, including the Pacific Crest Trail. So those are really good. This not as good. The author says a lot of profound things in this book. I do want to reread this just to highlight some of the lines from this book. It's very reflective. It will really make you think. But she does paint herself in a less than favorable light, which I like a lot of the time in the book, which I actually quite appreciated because it gave a sense of honesty about the book, you know? Like she wasn't trying to make herself look good, but something that really annoyed me about this was that she seems very self-centered almost. Like, I don't know. She's always talking about how hot she is, and like, to be fair, she's a pretty woman. She was beautiful when she was younger. But like, she's constantly mentioning that in the book. And also just all these selfish decisions and, you know, judging just solely based on the writing. She's a good writer. She does kind of drag it on a little bit. Also, I found this was long-winded for no reason. But yeah, this book did make me cry a couple of times. When she goes into the losses that she's experienced in her life, it really, really broke my heart. I understand why she struggled the way that she did, but yeah, it's hard to get past the like blatant selfishness. But I mean, also she did really grow a lot and realize a lot throughout her journey. So the back here says, at 22, Cheryl Strayed thought she had lost everything. In the wake of her mother's death, her family scattered and her own marriage was soon destroyed. 4 years later, with nothing more to lose, she made the most impulsive decision of her life. With no experience or training, driven only by blind will, she would hike more than 1,000 miles of the Pacific Crest Trail from the Mojave Desert through California and Oregon to Washington State. And she would do it alone. Told with suspense and style, sparkling with warmth and humor, Wild powerfully captures the terrors and pleasures of one young woman forging ahead against all odds on a journey that maddened, strengthened, and ultimately healed her. You know, the most frustrating thing about reading this is that you just want to yell at her because she makes poor decision after poor decision, and it almost feels like she just doesn't learn from her mistakes. And yeah, but then again, also this was written back in a time, not written, but she took this journey back in a time when not a lot of people were doing very long distance backpacking like that. So to be fair, it's understandable why she would have made some of the mistakes that she did, but she just didn't learn from them. It didn't seem, I don't know. I was so torn on that book. I was frustrated with her, but also my heart, I had a huge place and have a huge place in my heart for her story because just a very difficult story. And I think I rated it 3.5 or 3.75 out of 5. So, I would recommend reading it, but just be prepared that you might get a little frustrated with her if you're anything like me. Okay, I have 6 more left. Next, I read this book of poetry. It's called The Rose That Blooms in the Night. It's by Ali Michelle. This is somebody that I used to follow quite closely. She had a podcast with another girl named Raquel. It's called Your Own Magic, and it's like a spirituality podcast I found very interesting. I used to listen to that a lot, and that's where I found this book, and I ordered it online because I was very curious about her writing, and it was so beautiful. The back says, have you heard the story of the rose that blooms in the night? Without the sun's presence, she grew from her own light. She did not yearn for his warmth on her petals, for she knew she held the power to radiate light from within. Though she had strong thorns, her heart was always open, for those with an open heart can never be broken. I really liked this book. I'm not a huge poetry person, but I wrote all over through this entire book my thoughts and feelings, and there's just a lot of really gorgeous poetry in here that opens your eyes to a lot of things and makes you think. This will definitely be one that I come back to again and again, I think. And I'm very interested in her other poetry books too. I think that it was just gorgeous, and the illustrations are beautiful in here. Very highly recommend The Rose That Blooms in the Night. I don't like spoken word poetry at all. That's actually a pet peeve of mine. It just gives me shivers in a bad way. Like Ruby's poetry, not a fan. I just cannot get on that bandwagon. This is nothing like that. It's really beautiful. I rated this 4.5 stars out of 5. Really enjoyed that one. Next, I read I just picked up a box of books randomly from somebody on Facebook, and she put this book in there. I didn't know anything about this. It's a large print book, huge, and there's 2 books in here. They're both books I've never heard of. One is called Stargazy Point by Shelley Noble, and one is called The Promise by Anne Weisgarber. Just randomly picked this up and read this first one, Stargazy Point, and I loved it. Seriously, I loved it. It's set in South Carolina, in this tiny town called Stargazy Point. It's on the coast, and it's just very tight-knit. Everybody knows everybody. It's cozy, and I mean, it's not exciting. It's not like that well written, but I just like ate it up. It's kind of a romance, small town romance story. It's super predictable, but I just felt like I was wrapped in a warm blanket with, I don't know, a cup of hot chocolate reading that. It's just such a cozy story to read, and honestly, one of my favorite ones that I've read this year. I rated it 4.25 on Storygraph. I'll read you the synopsis on Goodreads. Shelley Noble's Stargazy Point is a beautiful story of love, heartbreak, friendship, and new beginnings. Devastated by tragedy during her last project, documentarian Abby Sinclair seeks refuge with 3 octogenarian siblings who live in a looming plantation house at the edge of the world. South Carolina's Stargazy Point used to be a popular family beach resort, but the beaches have eroded, most of the businesses have closed, and the crowds have gone. It's the perfect place to hide from the rest of the world. But hiding is harder than she thought it would be. There's a wise gullah woman who seems to see into Abby's soul, and an intriguing man on a quest to bring Stargazy Point back to life. Stargazy Point by Shelley Noble is the perfect beach read any time of the year. Yeah, I would say that it's a really good, cozy read, and I really enjoyed it. Yep. Like that one. Stargazy Point. Next, I've got this monster. It by Stephen King, tabbed to death. This is a super old, super beat up copy. I have so much to say about this one. I could probably do a whole video just talking about reviewing it by Stephen King. When it comes down to it, I did not like it, which is a very unpopular opinion. I rated it 2.75 stars on Goodreads. I mean, on Storygraph. It started off so strong for me. I mean, despite not being crazy about the actual story, it's undeniable that Stephen King's writing is absolutely breathtaking. It's stunning. His world building skills are untouchable. His character development is also very well done, always. But I found there were a few creepy scenes, but it was more disturbing and unsettling, which I like. I like that kind of thing. But the ending was just, what was that, guys? Like, I didn't like the ending of this at all. It wasn't scary. It was kind of like a fever dream. Also, something I'm not crazy about is like, he just doesn't know like where to draw the line, where to stop. There's a lot of sections in the book that just drag on and on and on with needless backstory, needless detail. It took forever to read this book. I think it took like 2 weeks, like 2 whole weeks for me to read this, and I go through like 1 to 2 books a week. Not this. This is the longest book I've ever read, I think. It's over 1,000. Yeah, it's 1,090 pages. I don't know. Yeah, definitely. Reading's very subjective. And yeah, this was one that I will never read this again. I thought the movie was way creepier than the book. I thought the movie was, not the first one though. The first one was nothing like the book. But yeah, I didn't like it. He also just kind of goes for like the shock value of things. Like whenever he's describing a man getting hurt, it's always like he gets hurt, like his privates get hurt. Or like he just always brings up like genitalia and like chill with that, bro. Like that's a little much, Steve. It's a lot. Things can be shocking without involving that so much. If you say it once, it's shocking. If you say it like 5 or 6 times, it's like, I don't know, it just made me a little uncomfortable. And it was weird. Like it almost felt like a bad, like he was taking drugs and having a bad trip or something and came up with this. But like, also, it's a masterpiece. Like, just because I don't like the story and didn't enjoy reading it doesn't mean that I can't recognize that it's just like absolutely brilliant. And I would never in a million years be able to write anything like that. I don't think that many people can. But yeah, just wasn't for me. I just didn't like reading it. So that was it by Stephen King. Next, I have 2 1-star books and 2 5-star books. So I'll start with the 1-star books. The first one I don't even have anymore. I gave it away. And to be honest, it's not the book's fault that I rated it 1 star. It's mine. I should have known better than to try and pick this one up. It was Calico Joe by John Grisham. I know absolutely nothing about baseball. And I, quite frankly, am not very interested in sports. I thought that maybe I could get into it and try something a little different, but I did not like it. Gave it 1 star. The premise, I mean, yeah, I gave it to my friend's dad because it just seemed like something he would like. So the synopsis is this. Whatever happened to Calico Joe? When he arrived in Philadelphia, a cab delivered him to Veterans Stadium, where he was quickly fixed for a uniform, given number 42, and hustled onto the field. The Cubs were already taking batting practice. Understandably, he was nervous, thrilled, almost bewildered, and when the manager, Whitey Lockman, said, "Get loose, you're starting at the first and hitting 7th, Joe Castle had trouble gripping his brand new bat. In his first round of Major League batting practice, he swung at the first 2 pitches and missed. He would not miss again for a long time. In the summer of 1973, Joe Castle was the boy wonder of baseball, the greatest rookie anyone had ever seen. The kid from Calico Rock, Arkansas, dazzled Cub fans as he hit home run after home run, politely tipping his hat to the crowd as he shattered all rookie records. Calico Joe quickly became the idol of every baseball fan in America, including Paul Tracy, the young son of a hard-partying and hard-throwing Mets pitcher. On the day that Warren Tracy finally faced Calico Joe, Paul was in the stands rooting for his idol, but also for his dad. Then Warren threw a fastball that would change their lives forever. In John Grisham's new novel, The Baseball is Thrilling, but it's what happens off the field that makes Calico Joe a classic. Yeah, this is a highly rated book. I imagine that a lot of people would have enjoyed this story, but for me it was just a lot of baseball jargon and a lot of kind of like repetition, like Calico Joe did it again, top of the 7th, another home run, and then this and that, and just a lot of that. So it wasn't my cup of tea, but I could see why people would enjoy it. Next, my only other 1-star read, which I really thought I would enjoy, but did not, was Girl Wash Your Face by Rachel Hollis. This is a self-help book for women. And wow, it was really not good. The author comes off as very tone deaf. There's a whole chapter dedicated to not listening to people when they tell you no, not taking no for an answer, which I think that if we wrote a book for men saying don't take no as an answer, there would be like outrage, because that's a huge issue, social issue right now, like the Me Too movement and stuff. So I don't know why it's okay to write a book for women telling women that no, like, shouldn't be taken as an answer. I don't know. That kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Also, she points out just very weird things about herself. Like, she points out she's like, I don't know. I don't even know what to say, but like basically she'll say something negative and then be like, but I'm so good at this and I'm amazing and I run a multi-million-dollar company. But it's like a very like disguised brag. She's like, it's very humble braggy in the whole book. And I don't know, it just didn't, I just didn't like it. Yeah, she kind of just brags a lot about her accomplishments. She's extremely privileged. She was talking about how she was very stressed out, and she realized that it's because she hadn't taken a European vacation in 3 years. Like most of the working class people can't afford to go on like luxury vacations every year, and she was complaining that it had been 3 years since she'd taken a 2-week vacation somewhere. I've never done that in my life, like, and I know a lot of people can't. Yeah. And then she talks about how, like, set a goal and never waver from that goal. Don't ever break a promise to yourself. And then she goes on to be like, let go of perfection. It's okay to be lazy sometimes and stuff. So what is it? She contradicts herself all the time. It's just very vain, very contradictory, almost hypocritical, kind of like humble braggy. I'm really tearing this book apart, but I really didn't like it. I think that it can be actually quite harmful if it gets into the hands of like a young, impressionable girl, or people who don't have the opportunities that this woman has. Anyways, really didn't like that one. Now moving on to my 2 5-star reads of the year. These ones, straight up 5 stars. The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. This is a dystopian novel about just this futuristic society. It says, in Margaret Atwood's dystopian future, environmental disasters and declining birth rates have led to a second American Civil War. The result is the rise of the Republic of Gilead, a totalitarian regime that enforces rigid social rules and enslaves the few remaining fertile women. Fred is one of these, a handmaid bound to produce children for one of Gilead's commanders. Deprived of her husband, her child, her freedom, and even her own name, Fred clings to her memories and her will to survive. At once a scathing satire, an ominous warning, and a tour de force of narrative suspense, The Handmaid's Tale is a modern classic. This is the first Margaret Atwood book I've ever read, and oh my goodness, her writing is so beautiful, so poetic, so descriptive. Her world building is incredible. I really felt like I was in that world, and like I could visualize what was going on, and I can even envision, like, it's kind of scary because there are some things here that when you read it, you can kind of see happening. Yeah, and it's just very unsettling, super creepy. It has an open ending, which I personally love when books have endings that allow for your own kind of interpretation of what happens. But I have a copy of her new book, The Testaments, which is kind of a what happens after, written a long time after. I believe The Handmaid's Tale was written in the 80s, I think. Was it in the 80s? 1985, yeah. And The Testaments is recent. It came out within the last few years, and I've heard not so great things about it, so I'm very intrigued, and I'm looking forward to reading that. So The Handmaid's Tale was just absolutely brilliant. I absolutely adored it. Super highly recommend this book. Yeah, one of the best books I read this year. And the other one, I was not expecting to love this book as much as I did. This is The Giver by Lois Lowry. A lot of people I know had to read this in school. My 2 younger brothers had to read this in school. They gave me their copy that they read. They were like, they call me Sa. My name's Alyssa. My actual name's Alyssa. They call me Sa. They were like, Sa, do you want this book? I was like, okay, because they know that I love books. They just hand off their books to me, I guess. So, yeah, I don't know. I read it and sobbed, and I was thinking about it for days after. I still think about it. I went into it having absolutely no clue what it was about. It wasn't part of the required reading when I was in school, but the ending also, like, you can interpret it in so many different ways. Oh my gosh, this is so good. It's another one of those kind of like dystopian world kind of stories, so I think that I'm definitely drawn to that kind of a theme. But here's the synopsis. Jonas's world is perfect. Everything is under control. There is no war or fear or pain. There are no choices. Every person is assigned a role in the community. When Jonas turns 12, he is singled out to receive special training from the Giver. The Giver alone holds the memories of the true pain and pleasure of life. Now it's time for Jonas to receive the truth. There is no turning back. And it goes through the Giver transferring memories, and you learn that their world is black and white because there's no color. Nobody remembers color. Only the Giver can transfer those memories, and just him learning and experiencing things vicariously through memories for the first time, and really realizing the truth and the pain in the world, and being the only one who can know this. It's a mind-blowing book. Really makes you think, and I loved it. So yeah, those are all the books that I've read so far this year. I hope that you liked that kind of rambly book chat. I have been considering making a separate channel, a non-ASMR channel, just for fun videos, like book videos, book reviews, a book collection, singing, vlog type things, where I can just kind of be more myself. If that's something that you would be interested in watching, let me know, because I'm definitely interested in doing something like that. So yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this relaxing, soft-spoken, bookish video. And if you did, please like, and subscribe for more content. So, thank you so much. Have a wonderful night.